All right, now taking a look at the business and perhaps market fallout from what's been happening around the events of President Cyril Ramaphosa. The rand remains bruised against the US dollar after weakening more than 4% since Wednesday evening. This is global investors considered the prospects of an early exit for the president over a report on the Phala Phala saga. Right, let's just very quickly take a look to see what's been happening with the local currencies since Wednesday. And this has been really the biggest weakening since November 2016. And you can see throughout late November, coming into December, as we hit Wednesday, you can see that huge drop in the value of the rand against the dollar. But that's not only where it ended. Local 10-year government bonds spiking about 91 basis points, around about a percentage point. And the bond is crucial because it really tells you the cost of borrowing on the international market. And that interest rate went up. I want to bring in very quickly, as we look at this, FNB Wealth analyst, Wayne Mccurrie, for more on this. Wayne, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I mean, it's clear this rand slump was because of the events around President Ramaphosa. I mean, what were investors, you think, considering when they dumped the rand? And I say it's clear, it's local, because everything else supported the fact for the rand to be actually stronger this week.
Correct. Yes, the dollar is weakening, so the rand, in theory, should be stronger. Look, these things happen. In South Africa, worldwide, we get this political turmoil. You know, as long as we don't descend into chaos, it doesn't actually matter who's in charge per se over the medium term. You know, as long as the Zuma camp don't come back into power, it doesn't actually matter as long as the agenda is still carried forward that the current state president has started. So these political things happen. Exactly the same thing happened when Finance Minister Nene was fired by then President Zuma, and they put Desmond in for 4 days, and then Pravin Gordhan came back. You know, these political movements actually don't really count longer term as long as the overall agenda doesn't change. The rand is driven by factors way bigger than this. It might cause ructions for a week, for a month, for a day, for 5 days. Who knows how long it is. But it doesn't really matter if the state president resigns or doesn't resign, as long as the overall economic agenda is still kept, economic and political agenda is still kept in place. You know, you won't even remember this in a very short time period. Yeah. You know, politics ultimately is not about the people, it's about the policy. So as long as the policy doesn't change, this will blow over, and probably blow over quite quickly.
But Wayne, having said that, that's perhaps where the uncertainty lies. I mean, I just want to zone in on government bonds, for example. I mean, we've seen a spike there, and that simply tells us, I mean, in simple terms, that those lending us money on the bond market are demanding higher interest. And that spike over the last 24 hours suggests that degree of uncertainty, because now they're demanding more money in terms of interest ever since this happened. That's what the spike would suggest. So, I mean, one would argue that the uncertainty is coming in.
Yeah, look, Devin, the market hates uncertainty. You know, even if the news is bad, as long as it's certain, then you can plan around it. So the uncertainty itself, the state president promising he's going to talk last night, then not talking, and saying he's going to talk today but hasn't given a time. So the uncertainty itself, irrespective of the outcome, does cause a problem in markets. But this happens absolutely worldwide. It's not that unusual to have political interference or political issues that actually interfere with the market's normal functioning. Over long time periods, the market's driven almost exclusively by economic factors and not by political factors.
Will it hurt the view on our investment prospects there? Because let's remember, President Ramaphosa coming in, you know, on the ticket of actually boosting up the economy, implementing those structural reforms, managing the debt, for example. I'm just wondering, what does that do to the investor who also looked for some sort of progress on that front? Does it add a certain degree of again, I use the word uncertainty in that regard?
Yes, It definitely does. But I mean, we have to understand, as I said early on, as long as the agenda doesn't change, if one of ex-President Zuma's team gets in and the let's call it the Zuma camp wins power in the ANC, then we will have total chaos in the country. Then the rand will weaken even more, and it'll stay weak. And the South African shares, the banks and the retailers will go down, and the mining shares and the big rand head shares will go up. And that will be a sustained movement. But I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I doubt if that happens. So as long as either the current state president stays in power and faces impeachment and all the other consequences, or someone else from his camp takes over, this will be over in a very, very short time period. So it's really dependent on who takes power in the NEC, whether it's meeting today or on the weekend, and the net result of that, whether it's President Ramaphosa or someone else, as long as it's from the same camp, ultimately the markets won't mind. I mean, as you said, he has started to institute structural reforms. Our government debt, mainly because of excess tax revenues from mining companies, doesn't look nearly as bad as what the projections were a year or two ago. And we have, as you've said, seen some structural reforms, and hopefully that will continue, because if that is correct, literally in a few days, this will all be over, as long as the market's got certainty.
Just one quick one, on the list of priorities as far as investors are concerned is this big word called corruption. Investors really look out for that being tamed. Do you think that his potential departure from that position makes a dent in our traction to fight corruption? And does that then have some sort of an impact on investor sentiment from that angle?
No, look, it definitely will. But as long as someone takes over from his camp and pushes the same agenda, we shouldn't suffer setbacks in the fight against corruption. And it's not just corruption. It's actually corruption and inefficiencies. You almost wish if politicians can be corrupt, as long as they're efficient, as long as they actually do their job, they can be corrupt. The problem is they were corrupt and didn't do their job, and that's why we have collapsing municipalities and collapsing infrastructure, and that's why we got Eskom, and that's why we got Transnet, and that's why we got Rand Water, and that's why we got another 2,000 state-owned enterprises in deep, deep trouble. It's not just the fight against corruption; it's to put in competent people and deliver good services on time and accurate, and it's the whole running of the country, essentially, because the biggest deficit we have in South Africa is a deficit of confidence into the future. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. You're unsure. You don't know whether the Eskom will be sorted out and all the SOEs, and you don't know whether the government will be able to do their job properly and maintain the infrastructure and maintain their health services and all of these things. So it's this deficit of confidence that's holding back investment and getting the country going and creating jobs. There's lots of money to do it, but no one's going to invest if you're uncertain.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there for now. Wayne Mccurrie, market analyst at FNB Wealth and Investments. That's